accepting our offer to provide you with the authority to open new markets to U.S. exports. Our economy is in dire straits. Unemployment is sky high, and federal spending is out of control. Mr. President, we need your leadership, and we need it now. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The junior senator from Ohio.
Mr. President, let me start by thanking the senior senator from Ohio for his generosity in allowing me to speak now, and also to commend Senator Hatch. He's been a leader on expanding exports and therefore creating jobs for many years, and again, he's standing up today talking about the importance of us moving forward on a pro-growth trade agenda, including giving the President the ability to have trade promotion authority. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Senator McConnell, the Republican leader, introduced an amendment to the underlying legislation saying that along with trade adjustment assistance for the same 3 years that there also be trade promotion authority given to this President, which all of his predecessors have had. That makes sense. The legislation in the amendment is actually identical to legislation that I introduced my first week here in the United States Senate on a bipartisan basis with Senator Lieberman to provide the President with trade promotion authority. It's incredibly important. I think it goes without saying that we live in an increasingly interconnected world where the movement of goods and services and people across borders is part of our economy. It's very much an economy where the United States is connected to our global competitors. We're moving forward around the globe on various arrangements, export agreements at a rapid pace. And yet, I'm sorry to say that the United States is simply not a part of that because we do not have trade promotion authority. These agreements that are being negotiated open markets for workers and farmers and service providers to be able to expand exports, again, of goods and services. And by the way, there are over 100 of those bilateral agreements being negotiated today. Guess how many the United States is party to? None. Not a single one. And the reason is we don't have the ability through trade promotion authority to have the United States at the table negotiating to open up these markets for our workers and our farmers and our service providers. There is one agreement that we're negotiating on. It's a regional agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I support the continued negotiation there. But frankly, it's not a bilateral agreement that's likely to reduce barriers significantly. The United States is getting left behind. We lost trade promotion authority in 2007. It expired. And at that time, President George W. Bush came to the Congress and asked for it to be renewed. Then Democratic-controlled Congress said, no, we don't want to give you the ability to negotiate these agreements that help, as Senator Hatch has said, to expand jobs in this country. President Obama's administration has not asked for the authority. In fact, Senator Hatch has just indicated they don't seem interested in having it, which is unbelievable to me, that you would not want the ability to negotiate with other countries to knock down barriers to be able to help our workers, our farmers, our service providers here in this country. But that's where we are right now. Before the 2007 expiration of trade promotion authority, the United States was active and involved in agreements that knocked down barriers to our exports. There were 3 agreements negotiated, now 3 and 4 years ago. These were agreements with Panama and Colombia and Korea. And those are the 3 agreements that have been talked about a lot on this floor over the last day because the trade adjustment assistance we're talking about is related to those 3 agreements. We need to get them done. They've been languishing for too long. Now, obviously, the United States not being able to negotiate anything in the interim period has fallen behind. But at the least, we should move ahead and ratify these 3 agreements. The President's own metrics tell us that these 3 agreements alone will generate 250,000 new jobs in this country. Look, with unemployment at over 9%, we need those jobs. And the jobs tend to be better paying jobs with better benefits. But what's happened in the interim while we have not moved forward with these agreements? Well, Korea has started a negotiation with the European Union since our agreement was finalized and completed that agreement and now made that agreement effective in July of this year. Exports from the European Union to Korea increased 36% in July alone. Our exports to Korea during that time period, by the way, increased less than 3%. What's happening? We're losing market share. We're losing jobs. While we sit back and allow these other countries to negotiate, remember, over 100 agreements being negotiated, we're not parties to any of them. Same thing has happened in Colombia. Since we negotiated the agreement with Colombia, Colombia started negotiating with other countries, including Argentina, Brazil, the Mercosur countries. And guess what's happened? They've completed that agreement. It's gone into effect. And again, our market share has diminished. We used to provide about 71% of the agriculture exports, corn, wheat, and soybeans, to Colombia when we completed the agreement. Today, that market share is down to 26%. That means farmers in Ohio, in Montana, in Utah, in Pennsylvania, and elsewhere are being disadvantaged by our trade policy. We've got to move forward with these agreements. Instead of having increased exports from Seoul and Bogota and Calgary and Munich, they should be coming from Cincinnati and Cleveland and Dayton and Columbus. Interestingly, Korea and Colombia have now started negotiating an agreement with themselves. And again, we're not moving forward because we're not part of these agreements, because we do not have trade promotion authority. I think these three agreements that I hope the President finally sends to the United States Congress for ratification are examples of the kind of agreements that we could have been negotiating over the past 3 or 4 years, and that we should start negotiating tomorrow by this Senate and the House giving the President the trade promotion authority that he needs to be able to have those negotiations and to open those markets for U.S. products. The reality is that trade promotion authority is vital for any president to have. Why? Because if you don't have trade promotion authority, the other countries will not sit down at the table and bargain with you. It's a pretty simple concept. If you want to get the best deal from another country, you've got to have trade promotion authority, because here in America, after we negotiate an agreement at the executive branch level, it has to come back to Congress. And other countries don't want to renegotiate an agreement with the United States Congress that would be full of amendments and changes. So, in order for us to ensure that we can get the best deal, we have to give the President trade promotion authority. Every president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt has asked for this authority and received it. It is unbelievable to me that this president does not want that. I believe he must want it. Any president would. And he should ask for it, and we should provide it to him. This amendment does exactly that. Congress has given TPA authority to Democrats and Republicans alike. It's not a partisan issue. So a Republican Congress has given it to a Democrat president and vice versa. I stand as a Republican today telling you I would like to give it to President Obama. The underlying amendment we're talking about provides trade promotion for 3 years. So it would be for this part of the president's term, and if he's reelected, the next couple of years, or if there's a Republican elected, for that person. It should not be about party. It should be about our country. The president's been talking a lot in the last couple of weeks about the fact that he wants products stamped with 3 words, made in America. I couldn't agree with him more. He's saying they should be exported all around the world. How's that going to happen? It's going to happen by opening up these markets, by leveling the playing field for us as Americans so that we can compete and win. When we open up these markets, we expand exports dramatically. Think about this. Countries with which we currently have trade agreements with, comprise less than 10% of the global GDP. Think about it. We don't have an agreement with China or the European Union. It's about 10% or less of the global economy. And yet, that's where we send about 41% of our exports. These agreements are good for us, which is why the Colombia Agreement, the Panama Agreement, and the Korea Agreement, in my view, will be able to pass this floor easily, because the facts are there if the President would just send them, and by giving the President trade promotion authority, we could go on and indeed make good on his promise to have more products stamped with those 3 words, made in America, sent all over the world. It's a little bit ironic to me that the underlying bill we're talking about, that TAA, the Trade Adjustment Assistance, is attached to, is the Generalized System of Preferences, GSP. It's not legislation that I oppose, but it is legislation that opens the United States more to products from other countries. So here we are talking about opening up the United States more with the GSP bill, and yet we're not willing to put in place measures to open up other markets more for the United States of America through trade promotion authority. How does that make sense? But that's where we are. To my colleagues, I would say if we aren't engaged in opening up markets, we're falling behind. America needs to get back in the game again. We need to take a leadership role in global trade. That means giving this president and all future presidents the ability to negotiate, just as all of their predecessors have had. I strongly urge my colleagues, Democrat and Republican alike, to give to this president the same authority that other presidents have had of both parties. Our economy and the future for our children and our grandchildren depend on it. Again, I thank my colleague from Ohio for his generosity, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Ohio.
Thank you. I thank the Senator from Ohio for his kind words, and I appreciate his support, his public support. He didn't speak specifically on the Casey Brown-Baucus amendment, I don't believe. I had to step out for a moment, but I know that he has said positive words about restarting, if you will, trade adjustment assistance, and with some expansion, not quite as good as it was from 2 years ago, but still in a very important program. I appreciate Senator Portman's words in support of expanding it, and I hope that he joins with some other Republicans in actually supporting the Casey Brown-Baucus amendment. I particularly thank Chairman Baucus for his strong support for trade adjustment assistance. Senator Casey especially has pushed for this for, well, almost a year now, when in December we did everything but beg our colleagues to renew this program that helps workers who are unemployed through no doing of their own. We had written in early 2009 a very good trade adjustment assistance. If you lose your job because of a trade agreement, if you lose your job because of trade, even if it's a service job, it used to just be manufacturing, that you'll get two things. One, you'll get trade adjustment assistance so you can continue with your life and not get foreclosed on, and continue to provide for your kids, and you have a little bit of money to get retrained. I met a woman in Youngstown not too long ago that lost her manufacturing job to trade. She got TAA. She used that money to go to nursing school at Youngstown State University, and she was in school with her daughter, also getting a nursing degree, and you think that's exactly how TAA works. And there are those examples, I'm sure, in Philadelphia and Harrisburg, and I'll bet you there's even examples in Provo of that trade adjustment assistance working in that way, and that's why it's so very important. At the same time, the language we wrote also gives help for people to continue their health insurance. I mean, I was at a place in Columbus not too long ago that specializes in helping people get back on their feet and get work. And to hear someone tell a story, first they lose their job, they don't get much assistance, then they lose their health care, and then they've got to talk to their 12-year-old son and 14-year-old daughter about moving because they've lost their home. And does nobody here, I mean, I shouldn't say nobody because a lot of my colleagues do care, but does nobody here care about somebody that's got to sit down with their kids and say, sorry, honey, we're going to lose our home because of foreclosure because we lost our job and we're not getting retrained and we can't find any work. I mean, that to me is what this is all about. Mr. President, I want to talk a little bit about trade adjustment assistance beyond what I said, but I also want to talk about some of my colleagues' statements about trade and what it's done for this country, to this country. And I hear all the theories. You know, every country in the world practices trade according to its national interests. The United States of America practices trade according to an economics textbook that's 20 years out of date. My first year in the House of Representatives, the Congress passed the North American Free Trade Agreement, something I know if Senator Casey had been here, he would have voted against it. I voted against it. And I remember the promises from the free trade at any cost crowd, and that they said NAFTA would create hundreds of thousands of jobs. They said it with NAFTA. They said it with PNTR with China. They said it with the Central American Free Trade Agreement, that if you pass this, it's going to mean more manufacturing and more high-tech jobs and stronger communities. And look what it's meant. Go to Springfield, Ohio. Go to Ashtabula. Go to Lima. Go to Mansfield. Go to Zanesville. Go to Chillicothe. Go to Xenia. Look at these medium-sized cities of 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people, and look what's happened to them. Often in smaller communities, the senator from Montana knows this, the presiding officer, often in smaller communities, husband and wife both work at a plant. Jackson, Ohio, I was walking a picket line with some workers that were locked out, and then the plant ultimately closed. And the number of people I saw, husband and wife, both working at this manufacturing plant, each making about $12 or $13 or $14 an hour. They were middle class with their combined income. This plant moves overseas, their family income's wiped out. It happens over and over in small towns, and it happens in Dayton, and it happens in Cleveland, and it happens in Columbus, and Philly, and Pittsburgh, and Harrisburg. It happens in small towns. It happens in big cities. And then we see these free trade at any cost crowd come to the Senate floor and say, If we only had Trade Promotion Authority, so we can do more of this, because it's just worked so well. Free trade's worked so well for our country. Why have we lost these hundreds of thousands of jobs? You know why? Because the business plan in this country, the business plan, never in world history, I don't think we've seen this, ever in world history, where the business plan for a company is shut down production in Steubenville, shut down production in Toledo, move that company to Shanghai, move that country to Mexico City, make those products, sell them back into the United States. So their business plan is to shut down manufacturing in this country, go overseas, hire cheaper workers, weaker environmental laws, non-existent worker safety laws, sell them back to the United States. That's what our manufacturing policy's been. That's why this whole idea of Korea and Colombia and Panama, as if Mexico and Central America and China weren't enough, this whole idea of free trade at any cost is bankrupting our country. That's why wages during the last 10 years during the Bush administration, and since 2001, wages in this country have gone down. We've lost jobs in this country. We haven't grown jobs in this country. It's about what we had in 2001 with a much larger population. Wages down, job growth flat. And this trade policy is working. So our answer is, let's do more of it, as if NAFTA and CAFTA and PNTR weren't enough. Let's do more trade agreements. Let's send more jobs overseas. Also, we can practice trade according to what the Washington Post and the New York Times and the right-wing papers and the left-wing papers and the Harvard economists and the economic elite in this country, also they can follow what they learned in Economics 101, taught with a textbook that's 20 years out of date. It's not working for our country. Now, Mr. President, I was talking on the phone today with a retiree in eastern Ohio, and she had just been with her son, who was about to be deployed at his base. She and her husband went and visited their son, who was a Marine, and she went to the commissary, and you know what? She bought a hat that said Marines. I think it said Marines. She bought a hat. She bought a bunch of stuff in the commissary. Where was it made? Guess. Wasn't made in Helena. Wasn't made in Harrisburg. Wasn't made in Columbus. This is insane. We have American flags that are made abroad. We have products in commissaries that are made abroad. We have products Senator Sanders spoke out against sold here in the United States Capitol are made abroad. Why? Because we have a trade policy that's morally bankrupt, politically bankrupt, economically bankrupt, and it's not working for our country. That's why, Mr. President, that's why this whole idea of Trade Promotion Authority, so we can do more of the same, makes no sense at all. But it's also why, Mr. President, we need to pass the Casey Brown Baucus Amendment. When we made the reforms to TIA in 2009, 185,000 additional trade-affected workers became eligible. In every state, 227,000 workers in 2010 alone participated in TIA. They got trained for more. They got trained for new jobs that employers are looking to fill. And I think we all know that we all have, even in this bad economic times, we have jobs that remain unfilled because they can't find workers with the right skills. This will help to fill that gap. We should all be for this. According to the Peterson Institute, before the recession hit, 01 to 07, two-thirds of TAA participants found jobs within 3 months of leaving the program. 90% stayed at these jobs for at least a year. It's a program that works. It helps people get health care. It helps people stay in their homes. It helps people get new skills so they can work. In last comments I'll make, Mr. President, I've said enough about the bankruptcy of American trade policy. It's moral bankruptcy and economic bankruptcy alike. Our trade deficit in 2010, if this isn't, and I don't like to come to the floor and use a lot of numbers, but if this isn't reason enough, 2010 our trade deficit was $634 billion. You know what that means? That means basically every day, almost $2 billion, we buy almost $2 billion worth of goods made abroad, then we sell abroad, almost $2 billion a day. If one-tenth the attention was paid to the trade deficit as we pay to the budget deficit, this would be a better country. We'd see more manufacturing in places like Cleveland and Columbus and Dayton. So our trade deficit with China was $273 billion in 2010. 10 years before PNTR, our trade deficit with China was $68 billion. It went from $268 billion to $273 billion in one decade. And so that works so well that we should do more of it. President Bush said that $1 billion in trade surplus or trade deficit translates into 13,000 jobs. $1 billion surplus means 13,000 additional jobs. $1 billion trade deficit means 13,000 fewer jobs. So our trade deficit with China last year was $273 billion. You don't have to be really good in math to know that translates into a lot of jobs. Making products sold at the Capitol, making products sold at commissaries, making products all over. Until we figure this out and pass trade agreements that are actually in our national interest, Mr. President, we're simply, pure and simple, betraying our national interest and betraying the middle-class families and the families in our country that aspire to be middle class. President, I support the Casey Brown Baucus amendment. Thank Chairman Baucus again for his work, and I yield the floor.
Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that Andy Lipstein of Fristell, a detailee to the Senate Health Committee, be granted floor privileges for the duration of the Senate floor business today.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I've come to the floor to pursue a unanimous consent request on something that is critical to families in my home state of New Jersey, which has the highest rate of autism, but it's also critical to families across the country who have a loved one who faces one of the, in the spectrum of autism and other developmental issues, the need to get the help so that their child, their loved one, can fulfill their God-given capabilities. Last Tuesday morning, a full week ago from today, I sent this bill before the Senate for unanimous consent. And that unanimous consent was cleared on the Democratic side, but it has not been cleared on the Republican side, which has prevented this bill from passing. This legislation was reported out of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee on September 7th without amendment and with unanimous support, Republicans and Democrats together. This result, the result of a bipartisan effort with Senator Enzi, who is the ranking member of the Health, Education, Labor Committee, is vital to ensuring that the programs created under the landmark Combating Autism Act of 2006 continue. That bill was signed into law by President George W. Bush after passing the Senate on a unanimous consent. This long history of bipartisan support only adds to my confusion as to why there are colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are currently preventing the bill from passing. This legislation has unanimous support from Democrats and strong bipartisan support throughout the Senate, including 9 Republican co-sponsors. Without Senate approval, the Combating Autism Act will sunset at the end of next week, leaving countless families across our nation without the support they need in caring for their children with autism. This bill provides an additional 3-year of guarantees in terms of simply in the context of an authorization. Obviously, appropriation processes would have to go through the process, and there would have to be debated and voted on the floor. But that authorization for 3 years at FY11 appropriated levels for the programs of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Institutes of Health, and the Health Resources and Services Administration are vital to continuing our efforts on diagnosing autism spectrum disorder, advancing behavioral therapies to improve social abilities with those with autism, providing families with education and support services to better understand autism, and to coordinating federal efforts on researching autism. Now, I've worked closely with Senator Enzi, who has been a co-champion in this regard, on this legislation to address all concerns. Since it cleared the Health, Education, and Labor Committee with full bipartisan and unanimous support, I thought we'd succeeded in addressing those concerns. I have not been approached or heard a single objection from any Republican as to why they might hold this bill. and I have been open in my willingness to work with the other side in addressing their concerns with the bill's policy. Having not heard a single objection to the merits of this legislation, which, by the way, the exact replica is being offered by the Republican majority in the House, I have to assume that this is for reasons other than policy. We've had a week to have the opportunity to bring this forward. It has caused incredible uncertainty and unnecessary worry for the parents of children with autism as they wait anxiously to learn if the government is going to continue to reauthorize the very essence of the programs that has helped their children be able to fulfill their God-given potential to the maximum ability that they can. I have met family after family in which this legislation has made an enormous difference in their lives. And I don't understand any reason, considering all the work that has been done, considering the bipartisan support, considering that the House Republican majority is offering the same legislation while we have not been able to pursue this. So therefore, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent of the Senate to proceed to the consideration of calendar number 163, S-1094, the Combating Autism Reauthorization Act, that the bill be read a third time and pass. The motion to reconsider be laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, on behalf of myself and several colleagues, I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
Senator from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to commend my colleague for his attention to this issue. Autism is a very difficult issue for many families, and the incidence of autism in our country is growing. I'm thankful that Congress, in its wisdom a number of years ago, has established agencies such as the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Health, where we have scientists, physicians, and many others who are dedicating their lives to researching not just autism, but cures for many, many diseases. I appreciate, again, my colleague for bringing this up, but I'm afraid this is another example of political good intentions with many, many unintended consequences. The lobby to support autism is definitely very strong, and we appreciate that. But there are many, many diseases that children and people throughout our country face, and we have put experts in place to determine where we can spend the money that we allocate for medical research, and we need to leave that to experts. We've seen when our government tries to pick winners and losers. We tried to do it in the solar business a year or so ago. There are many companies in the solar business, but we picked one. We didn't exactly know what we were doing, and we gave $500 million to an effort that was not the best place to send taxpayer money. Autism research will continue, and I think that's something we need to make very clear. The people that we've put in charge of doing medical research will continue to do that medical research. The Congress does not have to decide how much we're going to spend on all the different diseases that affect Americans. There are many children facing a disease that we don't understand, and they don't have the lobby that many other diseases have. And we cannot, from a political perspective, in an attempt to demonstrate our compassion, try to direct all the scientific and medical research from the floor of the Congress. So all of us who object support autism research. We'll continue to try to make sure the funding for medical research is there. But it makes absolutely no sense for us, from where we sit, to try to play scientist and physician and to know where the best outcomes will be and where we get the most money. If we're going to do that, we might as well decide what kind of medical equipment is going to be used, what kind of drugs are going to be used. We certainly don't have that capability. I'm very thankful that Dr. Coburn has taken this issue for years to try to leave the decisions of medical research in the hands of those who really understand it. Our job as a Congress is to continue to appropriate the money, which we will, for medical research. Autism research will continue, as well as research for many other diseases. And hopefully we can make sure that that funding is there, because many families are suffering, and we need to make sure we do our part in the research area. So I want to welcome my colleagues in the majority to bring this bill to the floor for debate. We're certainly not blocking debate on this issue, but passing something like this without any debate and without any open vote is not what Congress should be doing right now. So thank you, Mr. President, and I yield.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, thank you for the recognition, and I would recognize the good work my colleague, the senator from New Jersey, has done on this issue. I've been in the Senate a little over 6 years and was cajoled into allowing this to pass the last time it passed. I have blocked every other disease-specific piece of legislation, and there's a reason for that. Both the last director of the NIH and the current one caution against us being specific in what we demand them to do. And there's a reason for that. Our science is changing enormously. We are now at the molecular level. We're at the genetic level. We're at the immune level of thousands of diseases. What we research in diabetes now has prevalence for neurosciences. What we research in neurosciences now has prevalence for tons of other diseases. And what Dr. Zerhouni told us, he said, please don't do this. I'm known in this body to be a stickler on spending, but if there were two areas that I would increase spending in our budget, it would be to the NIH and to the National Science Foundation, both of them. And I recently reported out a report that was somewhat critical of some of the spending on the National Science Foundation. We can do everything better. But the important aspect is that no one who is opposing the reauthorization of this bill right now is opposed to autism research or the ideas behind it. What we are opposed to is tying the hands of the researchers and the directors at NIH and telling them what they should do and how they should do it. I would also dispute the fact that the money won't go away. The CR that we're going to consider this week will continue this funding as the level of what it is until November 18th, which gives us plenty of time to work with Senator Menendez to work out some of our problems with this piece of legislation. So we come to this debate in good faith. We recognize the emotional ties that are associated with such a devastating disease. As an obstetrician and pediatrician, I've diagnosed it, I've treated it, I've sat with the families as they've suffered through the consequences of this disease. I don't take it lightly. But I also don't take lightly our inability to make the clear choices and ratchet around the monies for the NIH. What we should do is say, NIH, here's your money. Go where the science helps the most people in the quickest way and the science leads us. And at a time when our country is desperate to get our fiscal house in order, what we want is the most efficient NIH. What we want is non-duplicative grants at the NIH. What we want is no fraud in the grants associated with autism, which have been published and people are in jail for. We want that eliminated. So we want the oversight on the NIH to be across the board in every area. Are you doing what we're asking you to do to spend the money wisely and what the science would tell you to do, not what any one particular interest group would tell us to do. So I would ask that a unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of S-1094, the Combating Autism Reauthorization Act, and that my amendment at the desk related to requiring the Secretary of HHS to identify and consolidate duplicative overlapping autism funding through the federal government be agreed to, the bill as amended be read a third time and passed, and the motions to reconsider be laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, and any statements related to the bill be printed in the record.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I understand that. My commitment is to work with a senator from New Jersey to try to solve this problem before any funding would change, and I don't think it's going to change. I would also note to my colleagues that last year we had over $450 billion appropriated by the appropriators that was not authorized for anything. There was no authorizations at all. So this money isn't going to go away. There's no hurry. There's no tragedy. We can continue and we can work as colleagues to try to solve our problems as well as meet the demands that the senator from New Jersey thinks must be met. With that, I yield the floor.
Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. President, first of all, I appreciate my colleague's offer, and certainly we will take him up on it to have a discussion to see where we come to common cause, because this issue is far more important than anyone's ideological view. So I look forward to working with him and others who are concerned. Let me just, however, say there are some inconsistencies. If you do not believe that there should be a disease-specific reauthorization, then the CR does exactly that. It will, for a more limited time, but it will, in fact, reauthorize this bill, but only to November 18th. So whether that debate is now about reauthorizing a disease-specific allocation, or whether, which is what I was trying to accomplish, or whether in the CR, I would assume that the thinking will go that my colleagues will object to the CR under the basis that it has a disease-specific reauthorization for a much smaller period of time until November 18th. I'm not quite sure how the logic follows at the end of the day. Secondly, I think it is rather cruel to have an analogy that talks about loan guarantees to some energy entity and talking about autism and families. And when I hear the word lobby, of course, that creates a pejorative description. What's the lobby here? Lobby here are parents, American citizens, husband and wives, taxpayers who advocate for their children before their representatives. Now, I thought in a representative democracy that citizens have the right to go and advocate with their elected representatives for a point of view, even if admittedly that point of view is on behalf of the welfare of their child. So I really have a problem when I hear in this context the word lobby as if it is a negative, when a parent is simply trying to accomplish, and a universe of parents in our country who pay taxes are simply trying to accomplish getting the government's attention to a disease that afflicts their children and their ability to be able to function in this society to the full maximum potential that their God-given abilities gives them. So I really don't care for listening to about a lobby here. Last time I checked, this is what democracy is all about. Now, finally, I would just simply say that there is no guarantee. I know my colleagues suggested there is a guarantee that research into autism will continue. There is no guarantee of that. There's no guarantee of that. And the reason why I objected to the other unanimous consent by my colleague from Oklahoma is that, in fact, what we have is a set of circumstances that there would be, if you read that unanimous consent, would be a diminution of funds at the end of the day. So you either believe in a disease-specific reauthorization, which, you know, to some degree would be allowed, but then you take away all the funds. The whole reason this legislation came to be was to coordinate the very efforts of the federal government together to, in essence, meet the challenge of autism. Now, even when we listen to disease-specific legislation and the opposition to disease-specific legislation, I would emphasize that while the name would suggest this is only about autism, this improves services for children with many different developmental disorders and conditions, from autism, yes, but Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, intellectual disabilities, epilepsy. So it is a program that involves a number of efforts broadly based to prevent and detect and improve the health infrastructure for all children who might face any of these developmental disabilities, not just autism. Every year, this program trains thousands of professionals to better care for individuals with a broad range of developmental disabilities, including but not limited to autism spectrum disorders. And given the long waiting list that families often endure to receive diagnostic and treatment services, these programs are essential in addressing an urgent national health need. So, Mr. President, I don't quite understand the opposition. It boggles my mind. You're against disease-specific legislation, even though this has passed here by voice vote in the past, even though this passed unanimously out of the committee, even though a disease-specific provision will be in the CR, which I assume you would oppose if you don't want legislation to move forward, and then you tell families that they're lobbyists and they have no right to lobby, we shouldn't listen to their voices, and then you say that there will be, don't worry, there will be money for research when there is no guarantee. That's cruel, in my view, and there's no reason for it. And I would only hope that we can have a change of heart here so that we can have families who have an incredible challenge and who love their children and want to do everything they can to help them fulfill the maximum of their potential to be able to do so. That's what we've done for several years now under this legislation. My God, if we can't get things like this passed, I don't know where we're headed to in the Senate. But I hope for a better day, and I'm going to continue and insist until we achieve this, Mr. President. With that, I yield the floor.
For the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15 p.m.
So the Senate is recessing for their weekly party lunches. When lawmakers resume at about 2:15 Eastern, they'll continue working on a bill dealing with trade preferences for goods from developed